Deep in the woods of New Hampshire, a mystery written in stone has baffled historians and archaeologists for nearly a century. We're not talking about a few scattered rocks, but a sprawling 30-acre complex of massive stone chambers, walls, and curious carvings. It's called America's Stonehenge, and its origins are one of the greatest enigmas on the continent. Who built this incredible site and for what purpose? Was it a colonial farmer's folly, a ceremonial center for Native American tribes, or something far, far older? Today, we're pulling back the veil of time to explore the secrets of this megalithic puzzle. The official story, the one you'll find in most history books, credits a man named Jonathan Patty with building the structures in the 1800s. The theory goes that Patty, a shoemaker and farmer, built the chambers as root cellars and perhaps even a secret hideout for the Underground Railroad. It's a plausible, straightforward explanation. His family lived on this land for 5 generations. The problem is, when you actually visit the site, the root cellar theory starts to fall apart. Some of these chambers are incredibly complex with sophisticated stonework that seems far beyond the needs of a simple cellar. And then there are the astronomical alignments. These aren't just random piles of rock. They're a calendar carved into the very landscape. This is where the story takes a fascinating turn. In the 1930s, an insurance executive named William Goodwin bought the site. He was convinced it was the work of ancient European monks from Ireland who had fled to America long before Columbus. Goodwin dedicated his life and fortune to proving his theory, renaming the site Mystery Hill. He believed the inscriptions found on some stones were a form of ancient script. While his Irish monks theory has been largely discredited, he was the first to notice something incredible. The stones align perfectly with celestial events. The main site is arranged around a central sacrificial table, a controversial name given by Goodwin, a 4.5-ton grooved slab of granite. From this point, monoliths and standing stones mark the exact positions of sunrise and sunset on the solstices and equinoxes. Not only that, but they also track cross-quarter days, the ancient Celtic holidays like Beltane and Samhain, which fall midway between the major celestial events. Think about the precision required. To build a calendar of this scale, you would need sophisticated knowledge of astronomy and engineering. This raises a huge question. If a 19th century farmer didn't build it, who did? Could it be evidence of a lost, ancient culture right here in North America? Let's talk about the carbon dating, because this is where things get really interesting. Archaeologists have excavated charcoal from fire pits found deep within the site, near the foundations of the stone structures. The dates that came back are mind-boggling. Some samples date as far back as 2000 BC. That's 4,000 years ago, placing its construction around the same time as the famous Stonehenge in England. If these dates are accurate, it means people were arranging massive stones for astronomical purposes in North America thousands of years before the arrival of Europeans. This predates the Roman Empire, the ancient Greeks, and even the pyramids of Giza in their final form. So, if not a colonial farmer or Irish monks, who were these ancient astronomers? One compelling theory points to the indigenous peoples of the region. Native American cultures have a rich and deep history of astronomical observation. The Cahokia Mounds in Illinois, for example, feature a massive solar calendar known as Woodhenge. Across the continent, petroglyphs and structures align with the sun, moon, and stars. It's entirely possible that America's Stonehenge is a remnant of a sophisticated Native American civilization that understood the cosmos and inscribed their knowledge onto the land itself. However, many of the local tribes have no oral traditions associated with the site, which adds another layer to the mystery. Another, more controversial theory suggests a transoceanic connection. Proponents of this idea point to similarities between the construction here and megalithic sites in Europe, like those found in Portugal and the British Isles. Could Bronze Age sailors have crossed the Atlantic, bringing their astronomical knowledge and building techniques with them? This is the realm of what's often called fringe archaeology, but the evidence on the ground is hard to ignore. The stoneworking techniques, the use of drains, and the sheer scale of the project have led some researchers to argue that it doesn't fit with what we know about pre-colonial cultures in New England. They suggest it might be a missing piece of a global Bronze Age puzzle. Of course, skeptics argue that the site is a hodgepodge of different eras. They believe Patty did build some cellars, and that later, enthusiastic amateurs like Goodwin rearranged stones to create the astronomical alignments they wanted to see. They point out that because the stones are not buried deep in the soil, they could have been moved and reconfigured over the centuries. This modern creation theory suggests the entire mystery is just a 20th century invention, a sort of historical theme park, but that doesn't fully explain the ancient carbon dating or the sheer labor involved. Moving multi-ton stones is no easy task, even with modern equipment. Let's look closer at the sacrificial table. This slab has channels carved into its surface that lead to a collection bowl at the edge. Goodwin was convinced it was used for human sacrifice, a dramatic but unsupported claim. A more practical explanation is that it was used for pressing something, perhaps lye for soap making during the colonial era, or even apples for cider. Others believe the grooves were meant to channel liquids from ceremonial offerings. We simply don't know for sure. This single stone encapsulates the entire enigma of the site. Every feature has multiple conflicting explanations, spanning thousands of years of potential history. What we do know is that America's Stonehenge forces us to question our understanding of the past. It challenges the timeline of human settlement and technological capability in North America. Was there a forgotten culture with advanced astronomical knowledge living in these woods 4,000 years ago? Or is it a more recent creation, a testament to the enduring human desire to find patterns and meaning in the world around us? The site itself remains silent, offering up its stone monoliths to the sun and stars just as it has for centuries, or perhaps millennia. The stones hold their secrets close, leaving us to wonder and to search for answers. The truth is, the mystery of America's Stonehenge may never be fully solved. It's a place where science, history, and myth collide. It's a puzzle that invites us to be detectives, to weigh the evidence and come to our own conclusions. Whether it's the work of ancient Americans, European voyagers, or a colonial farmer, the site is a powerful reminder that our history is often more complex and mysterious than we imagine. What do you think? Who built America's Stonehenge? Let me know your theories down in the comments. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the unknown. If you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified of our next adventure into history's greatest mysteries. Have you ever heard the whispers, the old stories passed down through generations, of a time when giants walked the lands we now call America? It sounds like the stuff of fairy tales, right? But what if I told you that for over a century, reports of enormous skeletons, some measuring over 9 feet tall, have been unearthed from coast to coast? These aren't just campfire stories. We're talking about newspaper articles, town records, and even a few tantalizing accounts from reputable institutions. Today, we're digging deep into one of America's most fascinating and controversial mysteries: the truth, or myth, of the ancient giants. Let's travel back to the 19th and early 20th centuries. This was a golden age of archaeology and exploration in America. As settlers pushed west and farmers plowed new fields, they began to find things buried in the earth, things that didn't quite fit the historical narrative. All across the country, from Ohio to California, from Wisconsin to West Virginia, reports started flooding local newspapers. They described the discovery of human skeletons of incredible size. Take, for example, the famous case of the San Diego Giants in 1895. A newspaper report detailed the unearthing of a tomb containing the remains of 9 individuals, all reportedly over 8 feet tall. The account described them as having receding foreheads and prominent chins, a detail that fired up the public imagination. Or consider the countless reports from the Ohio Valley, a region famous for its ancient burial mounds. Time and time again, excavators reported finding unusually large skeletons, often adorned with copper armor and elaborate jewelry, suggesting they were part of a sophisticated, high-ranking class. One of the most intriguing accounts comes from the Lovelock Cave in Nevada. According to Paiute oral traditions, their ancestors fought a long and brutal war against a tribe of red-haired, cannibalistic giants. In the early 1900s, when guano miners excavated the cave, they allegedly found numerous artifacts and unusually large human remains, including a jawbone that was said to be twice the size of a modern human's. Some of these artifacts, including woven sandals over 15 inches long, are still on display today. Could this be physical evidence corroborating the Paiute legends? Now, this is where the story gets complicated and a bit shadowy. If all these discoveries were being made, where is the evidence today? Where are all the giant skeletons? This question is the heart of the conspiracy theory. Proponents suggest that mainstream institutions, particularly the Smithsonian, systematically collected these skeletons and then intentionally hid or destroyed them. Why? The theory goes that these remains didn't fit the established scientific and historical models of human evolution and migration into the Americas. The idea of a lost race of giants would have completely upended the narrative that was being carefully constructed at the time. Letters and internal memos have surfaced over the years that some researchers claim are smoking guns. They describe shipments of giant bones being sent to major institutions only to vanish from the records. Critics of this theory argue that these are misinterpretations. They say that 19th century journalism was prone to sensationalism and exaggeration. A 7-foot skeleton, which is tall but not unheard of, could easily become a 9-foot giant in a newspaper story aiming to sell copies. Furthermore, early excavation techniques were often crude, and measurements could be inaccurate. Many of the so-called giant bones, when re-examined by modern experts, have turned out to be from large but normal-sized humans, or in some cases even misidentified animal bones. The Smithsonian itself has consistently and vehemently denied any cover-up. They maintain that they have no giant skeletons in their collection because, simply put, they've never received any scientifically verifiable ones. They argue that the entire conspiracy is built on a foundation of tall tales, misidentified bones, and a fundamental misunderstanding of the archaeological record. They point out that many of the mound-builder cultures like the Adena and Hopewell were known to have individuals who were unusually tall for their time, often exceeding 6 feet, which would have seemed gigantic to people of smaller stature. These individuals were often buried in elaborate tombs, which could explain the frequent discoveries of large skeletons in positions of honor. So, what are we to believe? On one hand, we have a mountain of historical accounts, newspaper clippings, and local legends that are difficult to dismiss entirely. The sheer volume and consistency of the reports from different parts of the country are compelling. Native American oral traditions from various tribes, including the Paiute, the Choctaw, and the Osage, all speak of ancient races of giants, lending a layer of cultural and historical weight to the claims. It's hard to imagine that all of these separate sources independently invented such similar stories. On the other hand, the lack of hard, physical evidence in a museum or university today is a major hurdle for the giant theory. In the age of DNA analysis and advanced forensic science, a single verifiable giant skeleton would rewrite history. But so far, no such skeleton has been presented for independent, rigorous scientific study. Every bone that has been claimed as giant has either been debunked, lost, or remains inaccessible to mainstream researchers. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the middle. It's possible that an ancient group of people who were genetically predisposed to be exceptionally tall did exist in North America. They may not have been 10-foot-tall titans, but a population averaging close to 7 feet would have been truly gigantic to neighboring groups and would have certainly given rise to the legends we hear today. Their bones, discovered by untrained farmers and sensationalist journalists, could have easily been exaggerated into the stuff of myth. And what about the cover-up? While a massive, organized conspiracy by a single institution seems unlikely, it's not impossible to imagine a scenario of institutional bias. In the early 20th century, scientific dogma was powerful. Finds that didn't fit the accepted paradigm might have been quietly dismissed, labeled as anomalies, or simply stored away in a dusty basement and forgotten, not out of malice, but because they didn't fit the puzzle. The history of science is filled with examples of groundbreaking discoveries that were initially rejected by the establishment. The mystery of America's ancient giants forces us to question how history is written and by whom. It highlights the tension between oral traditions and written records, between local knowledge and institutional science. Were there really giants roaming the American continent? Or is this a modern myth, born from a blend of genuine archaeological oddities and our own fascination with the unknown? The ground beneath our feet still holds many secrets, and the bones of the past have stories to tell. Whether we are willing or able to listen is another question entirely. The search continues, and until a definitive piece of evidence is unearthed, the giants of America will remain shrouded in the captivating mists of legend and controversy. What do you think? Is this a massive historical cover-up, or just a collection of tall tales? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed digging into this mystery with me, please hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the fascinating and forgotten corners of our world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. What if I told you that long before Columbus, long before the Vikings, ancient civilizations in North America possessed a treasure so vast it would rewrite history? We're not talking about arrowheads and pottery. We're talking about gold, silver, and precious artifacts. A treasure described in a mysterious set of copper scrolls. This is the legend of a lost American fortune, a story that suggests the first peoples of this continent were far more advanced than we've ever been led to believe. For centuries, whispers and fragmented tales have hinted at incredible riches hidden across North America. These aren't just campfire stories. They are accounts passed down through generations, stories of great wealth buried in secret locations to protect it from invaders or natural disasters. But the most tantalizing clue of all comes from a discovery that sounds like it was ripped straight from an adventure movie: the Michigan Copper Scrolls. So, what exactly are these scrolls? In the late 1800s, a man named James Scotford claimed to have unearthed thousands of artifacts across Michigan. Among them were tablets and scrolls made of copper, slate, and clay. What was inscribed on them was astounding. They depicted biblical scenes, like Noah's Ark and the Tower of Babel, alongside strange symbols and what appeared to be an unknown form of writing. But the most shocking part? Some of these copper plates seemed to be maps, detailing the locations of vast underground storehouses filled with gold and other treasures. The story goes that a great ancient people, facing a cataclysmic event, gathered their most sacred items and immense wealth. They inscribed their history, their knowledge, and the locations of their caches onto these durable copper sheets. They then buried these records, hoping that a future generation would find them and reclaim their legacy. The scrolls were their time capsule, a message to the future, and a map to a fortune beyond imagination. Now, this is where things get controversial. Mainstream archaeology has largely dismissed these artifacts, often labeling them as elaborate 19th century fakes. The arguments are compelling. The style of the artifacts seems to mix cultures and timelines in a way that doesn't fit with our established understanding of pre-Columbian America. The depictions of Christian stories, for example, are a major red flag for a pre-contact civilization. Why would an ancient American culture know about the Great Flood before European missionaries arrived? But the story isn't that simple. Proponents of the scrolls' authenticity argue that this is precisely why they are so important. What if they represent evidence of a lost chapter in human history? A group of people who traveled across the oceans long before we thought possible, bringing their knowledge and beliefs with them. They point to the sheer number of artifacts found, over 3,000 of them, and ask, who would go to such incredible lengths to create such a massive and detailed hoax only to gain very little fame or fortune from it? And let's talk about the copper itself. Michigan's Upper Peninsula is home to the purest copper deposits in the world. Ancient copper mines, some thousands of years old, dot the landscape. We know for a fact that ancient peoples were mining and working with this copper on a massive scale. Is it really so far-fetched to believe they would use this durable metal to record their most important secrets? The scrolls, supporters say, are the missing link that connects these ancient mines to a sophisticated, continent-spanning culture. Imagine this: a civilization with advanced knowledge of metallurgy, navigation, and engineering. A people who built complex societies and traded across vast distances. According to the legend, these weren't simple hunter-gatherer tribes. They were a unified kingdom with a shared history and a common purpose. The scrolls tell of their leaders, their battles, and their deep spiritual beliefs. If true, it would mean that the history we learn in school is missing a massive piece of the puzzle. America's story didn't start in 1492. It started thousands of years earlier with a powerful and enigmatic people. So, where is this treasure now? That's the billion-dollar question. The copper scrolls are said to contain coded maps and cryptic instructions. Deciphering them is the key. Treasure hunters and amateur archaeologists have spent lifetimes trying to crack the code, following the clues etched into the ancient metal. They've explored remote caves, scanned hillsides with ground-penetrating radar, and pored over every symbol, hoping to find the entrance to one of these legendary storehouses. The legends speak of caches hidden in burial mounds, tucked away in caves behind waterfalls, or buried deep within the earth in man-made tunnels. One account describes a vault so large it contains the wealth of a nation, protected by clever traps and hidden from sight. These stories fuel the fire for modern-day explorers who believe they are on the verge of the greatest archaeological discovery in American history. They aren't just looking for gold, they are looking for proof. Proof that the scrolls are real, and that an advanced ancient American civilization has been overlooked by history. Whether you believe the Michigan copper scrolls are an elaborate fraud or the key to a lost world, you can't deny the power of the story. It taps into our collective love of mystery and adventure. It challenges our assumptions and asks us to consider the possibility that our world is far older and more mysterious than we know. The artifacts themselves are scattered, with many in private collections and others lost to time, making a comprehensive modern analysis nearly impossible. This only adds to the enigma. Ultimately, the legend of the Copper Scrolls is more than just a tale of hidden gold. It's a story about a forgotten past and a potential future. If even one of these treasure vaults were found, it would change everything. It would force us to reevaluate our understanding of the ancient world and the incredible capabilities of the people who inhabited it. Until then, the treasure remains hidden, waiting for someone with the courage and wisdom to unlock its secrets. The Copper Scrolls continue to whisper their story, a timeless invitation to explore the mysteries buried right beneath our feet. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey into the past. What do you think? Are the scrolls a hoax or a real treasure map? Let me know in the comments below. And if you love stories that challenge history, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more adventures into the unknown. We'll see you next time. Have you ever heard of a mysterious medieval tower, not in Europe, but right here in the United States? In Newport, Rhode Island, there's a stone structure that has puzzled historians and archaeologists for centuries. It's called the Newport Tower, and its origins are one of America's most fascinating unsolved mysteries. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're diving deep into a puzzle that could rewrite history. The official story is that the tower was built in the 17th century by Benedict Arnold, not the traitor, but his great-grandfather, the first colonial governor of Rhode Island. The theory goes that he built it as a windmill, inspired by a similar structure in his English hometown. And for a long time, that was the accepted explanation. It's neat, tidy, and fits comfortably within the established timeline of American history. But when you start looking closer, that neat story begins to fall apart. First, let's talk about the architecture. This doesn't look like any other colonial windmill. It's a round stone tower supported by 8 arches. This design is incredibly rare for a windmill, especially in the 17th century. Windmills from that era were typically wooden post mills or smock mills, which were much easier and cheaper to build. Why would Governor Arnold go to the immense trouble and expense of constructing such an unusual and robust stone tower just to grind corn? It seems like overkill, to say the least. Furthermore, the arches themselves are a major clue. Their specific shape, a slightly flattened Romanesque arch, is characteristic of medieval European construction, particularly from the 12th to the 15th centuries. This style was long out of fashion by the time the colonists arrived in the 1600s. It's like finding a brand new car with a hand-crank starter. It just doesn't fit the time period. The craftsmanship, the use of a specific type of mortar, and the astronomical alignment some researchers have found all point to a much earlier and non-English origin. So, if it wasn't a colonial windmill, what was it? This is where the theories get really exciting. One of the most popular and controversial ideas is that the Newport Tower was built by Vikings. We know Norse explorers, led by Leif Erikson, reached North America around the year 1000, establishing a settlement at Las Meadows in Newfoundland. Could they have traveled further south, down the coast, to modern-day Rhode Island? Proponents of the Viking theory point to the tower's resemblance to round churches found in Scandinavia, like the ones on the island of Bornholm in Denmark. These churches often served a dual purpose. They were places of worship and fortified defensive structures. A tower like this would have been the perfect lookout and stronghold for a small group of explorers in an unknown land. Imagine Norsemen, hundreds of years before Columbus, building this as a beacon, a church, or a fortress. It completely changes our understanding of pre-Columbian exploration. Another compelling piece of evidence comes from a 1948 archaeological dig. Dr. William Godfrey excavated the site, and while his initial conclusion supported the colonial windmill theory, his own data contained some inconsistencies. He found colonial artifacts, yes, but they were in the upper layers of soil. Deeper down, the soil was undisturbed, suggesting the tower's foundations were laid long before the colonists arrived. Critics of his work say he may have been too quick to dismiss anything that challenged the conventional narrative. Let's dig into another theory, one that connects the tower to a different group of famous seafarers, the Knights Templar. Yes, the legendary medieval military order. The story goes that after the Templars were suppressed in France in 1307, some of them escaped with their fleet and their legendary treasure. Could they have used their advanced navigational knowledge to cross the Atlantic and seek refuge in the New World? According to this theory, a Scottish nobleman named Henry Sinclair, who is believed to have had connections to the Templars, led an expedition to North America in the late 14th century, a full 100 years before Columbus. Proponents suggest that the Newport Tower was a watchtower or a church built by Sinclair's party. They point to alleged Templar symbols and carvings in the area, and they argue the tower's design is consistent with Templar-built round churches, like the Holy Sepulchre in Cambridge, England. It's a romantic and captivating idea. A secret society of knights building a hidden outpost in America. And the plot thickens even more. There's a third, equally intriguing theory, that the tower was built by the Chinese. Yes, you heard that right. Based on the controversial theories of Gavin Menzies, some believe that a massive Chinese treasure fleet, commanded by the Admiral Zheng He, sailed to the Americas in 1421. Menzies argues that the Newport Tower's construction, particularly its mortar and masonry, is more similar to Chinese techniques of the period than European ones. He suggests it might have been a lighthouse or an observatory built by this fleet. While this theory is highly debated by mainstream historians, it opens up a whole new realm of possibilities about who might have been exploring the world before the Age of Discovery. So, we have at least 4 strong contenders: a colonial governor's windmill, a Viking church, a Templar refuge, or a Chinese lighthouse. Each theory has its passionate supporters and its vocal critics. The colonial theory is the simplest, but it fails to explain the tower's strange design. The Viking, Templar, and Chinese theories are far more exciting, but they rely on connections and interpretations that are difficult to prove conclusively. The problem is the lack of definitive, irrefutable evidence. There's no cornerstone with a date, no diary entry from its builders, no Viking axe or Templar sword buried at its base. All we have is the silent, weathered stone of the tower itself, and the endless debates it inspires. Radiocarbon dating has been attempted on the mortar, but the results have been inconclusive and controversial. The samples contained materials from different time periods, making it impossible to pinpoint a single date of construction. It's a historical cold case. The Newport Tower stands as a powerful symbol of how much we still don't know about our own past. It forces us to question the stories we've been told and to consider that history might be more complex, more surprising, and more mysterious than we ever imagined. Was it the work of a forward-thinking but eccentric colonial governor? Or is it a silent testament to forgotten voyages and explorers who reached America centuries before the history books say they did? What do you think? I'd love to read your theories in the comments below. Is it the Vikings, the Templars, the Chinese, or just a really weird windmill? The mystery of the Newport Tower remains unsolved, a stone riddle waiting for someone to finally crack its code. Thanks so much for joining me on this historical investigation. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you won't miss our next adventure into the world's greatest mysteries. Until next time, stay curious. Did you know there are pyramids in Wisconsin? No, not the kind you're thinking of, with pharaohs and sand. I'm talking about massive ancient earthworks, some shaped like giant animals, others like geometric cones and ridges. These mysterious mounds dot the landscape of the American Midwest, silent monuments to a civilization that vanished long before Europeans ever set foot on the continent. Who were these people? What happened to their sprawling culture? Today, we're digging into the story of America's forgotten builders. Before the grand cities of the Maya or the Aztec Empire rose to power, a sophisticated culture was thriving right here in North America. We call them the Mound Builders, a catch-all term for several distinct groups who, for over 3,000 years, shaped the earth into incredible structures. We're talking about a period stretching from roughly 1000 BC all the way to the 16th century AD. This wasn't one single unified empire, but a succession of cultures, each with their own unique traditions and architectural styles. First came the Adena people, around 800 BC. They were pioneers, building conical mounds that served as sacred burial sites for their honored dead. Imagine communities coming together, using woven baskets and stone tools to move tons of earth, one load at a time, to create these lasting tributes. It was a monumental undertaking, a testament to their deep spiritual beliefs and social organization. Following them, the Hopewell tradition emerged around 200 BC. They took mound building to a whole new level. Their earthworks were more complex, often part of massive ceremonial centers enclosed by geometric walls of earth. But what's truly mind-blowing about the Hopewell is their trade network. Archaeologists have found materials in their mounds from all over the continent. We're talking obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, seashells from the Gulf of Mexico, copper from the Great Lakes, and mica from the Carolinas. This wasn't just casual trade. It was a vast, interconnected system that brought exotic goods and ideas to the heart of the Midwest, fueling a cultural renaissance. The craftsmanship of Hopewell artifacts is breathtaking. intricate copper ornaments, delicate pottery, and finely carved stone pipes. Then, around 800 AD, a new culture began to rise, the one most people think of when they hear mound builders. This was the Mississippian culture. They built the largest settlements, true cities with populations in the thousands. The most famous of these is Cahokia, near modern-day St. Louis, which was larger than London at the time. The Mississippians constructed enormous, flat-topped platform mounds. These weren't just burial sites, they were the foundations for the homes of chiefs, temples, and public buildings. They were the political and religious centers of their society, true pyramids of the prairie. Here in Wisconsin, we find a unique and fascinating expression of this ancient tradition, the effigy mounds. Built primarily by a late woodland group between 700 and 1200 AD, these aren't just simple cones or pyramids. These are mounds sculpted into the shapes of animals, bears, birds, water spirits like panthers, and even human figures. There are more effigy mounds in Wisconsin than anywhere else in the world. What did they mean? Most archaeologists believe these animal shapes represent the spiritual clans or totems of the people who built them. A bear mound might mark the territory or ceremonial grounds of the bear clan. A bird mound might be oriented towards the sky, connecting the earthly community with the celestial spirits. These weren't just random sculptures, they were a sacred map, a way of embedding their social structure and cosmology directly into the landscape itself. They were a declaration of identity, a prayer made of earth. Imagine walking through this landscape 1,000 years ago. The world wasn't just hills and rivers, it was alive with giant, sacred forms that told the story of your people, your ancestors, and your place in the universe. Effigy Mounds National Monument, which straddles the Mississippi River between Iowa and Wisconsin, preserves some of the most stunning examples. You can walk the trails there today and feel the presence of these ancient creators. It's an incredibly powerful experience. So, if these cultures were so successful, so widespread, and so sophisticated, where did they go? Why did this 3,000-year-old tradition of mound building suddenly stop? The answer is complex, and it's one of history's great mysteries. There was no single event, no dramatic collapse. It was a slow fade, different for each group. For the Hopewell, it seems their vast trade network began to break down around 400 AD. Why? Perhaps climate change shifted resources, or maybe new social dynamics made long-distance travel more dangerous. Without the flow of exotic goods and ideas, the cultural glue that held their society together may have dissolved. People began to focus more on local, self-sufficient communities. The grand ceremonial centers were gradually abandoned. For the Mississippians, including the effigy mound builders, the story is a bit different. By the 1400s and 1500s, many of their great cities, like Cahokia, were already in decline. Again, climate change, specifically a period known as the Little Ice Age, likely played a major role. Colder, less predictable weather would have strained their corn-based agriculture, leading to food shortages and social unrest. Overhunting and deforestation around these large urban centers would have made things even worse. It's a classic story of a society pushing its environment to the breaking point. And then came the final, devastating blow: the arrival of Europeans, and, more importantly, the diseases they brought with them. Smallpox, measles, and influenza swept through the continent, often far ahead of the explorers themselves, passed along native trade routes. With no immunity, Native American populations were decimated. Some estimates suggest that up to 90% of the population died in the centuries following contact. Entire communities were wiped out, oral histories were lost, and cultural knowledge vanished. The few survivors were forced to regroup, their societies forever changed. The living descendants of the mound builders, tribes like the Ho-Chunk, Menominee, and many others in the Midwest, were the ones who faced this new reality. Their ancestors were the ones who built the mounds, and their oral traditions still hold clues to their meaning. For a long time, Early American colonists refused to believe that Native Americans could have created such monumental works. They concocted elaborate theories about a lost race of giants or Vikings. It was a racist and convenient fantasy that justified the removal of native peoples from their ancestral lands. But archaeology has proven them wrong. DNA evidence and the continuity of cultural practices and oral histories have confirmed that the builders of the mounds were, without a doubt, the ancestors of the Native American tribes who live here today. The mounds aren't relics of a vanished race. They are the heritage of living cultures. They are sacred sites, cemeteries, and a direct physical link to an incredible, deep history. Today, thousands of mounds have been destroyed by farming, looting, and urban development, but many still remain, protected in parks and preserves. They stand as a powerful reminder that the history of America did not begin in 1492. There are deep, complex chapters of that story written in the very earth beneath our feet. They challenge us to look at the landscape not just as empty space, but as a place filled with history, meaning, and the enduring spirit of its original people. Next time you drive through the rolling hills of the Midwest, take a closer look. You might just be passing by one of America's forgotten pyramids, a monument to a world that deserves to be remembered. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into forgotten history. Let me know in the comments what piece of hidden history you'd like to explore next. See you in the next one. Today, we're journeying to a place where the Earth itself seems to whisper secrets of the cosmos. Deep in the hills of Ohio lies a colossal earthen sculpture, a magnificent serpent slithering across the landscape. This is the Great Serpent Mound, one of the most enigmatic ancient sites in the world. Stretching over 1,300 feet, this is the largest surviving effigy mound on the planet. But it's not just its size that captivates us. It's the mystery of who built it, why they built it, and what celestial knowledge they encoded into its very curves. For centuries, historians and archaeologists have debated its purpose. Was it a giant tomb, a ceremonial center, or a message left for sky gods we can only imagine? Join me as we peel back the layers of time to uncover the ancient code of the Great Serpent Mound. We'll explore the theories, from sacred burial ground to sophisticated astronomical calendar, and even touch upon the more fringe ideas of alien contact. What secrets are coiled within this earthen giant? Let's dig in and find out. Before we dive into the theories, let's appreciate the sheer scale and artistry of this ancient wonder. Imagine the effort it took for a prehistoric culture, without modern machinery, to sculpt this masterpiece. The serpent's body undulates with 7 distinct coils, its tail tightly wound into a spiral. But the most intriguing feature is its head. The serpent appears to be unhinging its jaw, as if to swallow a large, oval-shaped earthwork. Some interpret this as an egg, a symbol of life and creation. Others see it as the sun, a celestial body, or even a representation of a solar eclipse. The construction is remarkably precise. The builders carefully layered different types of soil and clay, packing them with stones to prevent erosion. This incredible engineering has allowed the mound to survive for centuries, a silent testament to the ingenuity of its creators. So, who were these master builders? For a long time, the Adena culture, which flourished from about 800 BC to 1 AD, was credited with its creation. This theory was based on the presence of Adena burial mounds nearby. It made sense. A culture known for its ceremonial earthworks could certainly be responsible for this grand design. However, modern science has thrown a fascinating curveball into this long-held belief. In the 1990s, archaeologists conducted radiocarbon dating on charcoal samples found within the mound itself. The results were startling. The new dates suggested the mound was built much later, around 1070 AD, placing it squarely in the era of the Fort Ancient culture. This culture, which inhabited the Ohio Valley from about 1000 to 1750 AD, was a sophisticated society of farmers and hunters. This discovery opened up a whole new chapter in the Serpent Mound story, but it also deepened the mystery. Unlike the Adena, the Fort ancient people didn't typically build effigy mounds of this type, and to make things even more complex, no artifacts have ever been found within the main body of the Serpent Mound itself. The structure is strangely, almost deliberately, empty. This lack of artifacts is one of the biggest puzzles. Most ancient ceremonial sites are rich with pottery, tools, or other cultural objects. The Serpent Mound's sterile interior suggests its purpose was something other than a settlement or a traditional burial site. So, if it wasn't a tomb or a village, what was it? This is where things get truly celestial. One of the most compelling theories is that the Great Serpent Mound is an enormous astronomical observatory, a calendar etched into the earth. The alignment of the mound is simply too precise to be a coincidence. Let's start with the serpent's head. The open jaws and the oval shape it appears to be swallowing align perfectly with the setting sun on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. Imagine standing there 1,000 years ago, watching the sun descend directly into the serpent's mouth. It would have been a powerful, awe-inspiring spectacle, a clear marker of a crucial point in the annual cycle. But the alignments don't stop there. The curves of the serpent's body also seem to point to other significant celestial events. Certain coils align with the sunrise on the winter and summer solstices, as well as the spring and autumn equinoxes. These 4 points are the cornerstones of the solar year, critical for an agricultural society to track seasons for planting and harvesting. The mound wasn't just art, it was a functional tool for survival. Even more amazingly, some researchers believe the mound tracks the movements of the moon. The lunar cycle is more complex than the solar one, with an 18.6-year cycle of what's called the lunar standstill. It is believed that the various curves and bends of the serpent's body may correspond to the northernmost and southernmost rising and setting points of the moon during this long cycle. If true, this would represent an incredibly sophisticated level of astronomical knowledge passed down through generations. And there's another cosmic connection. In 1054 AD, a massive star in the constellation Taurus exploded, creating what we now know as the Crab Nebula. This supernova would have been visible in the daytime sky for 23 days. Just a few decades later, around 1070 AD, the same time the Fort ancient culture is thought to have built the mound, Halley's Comet blazed across the sky. Could the serpent, a symbol often associated with powerful celestial events in many cultures, be a commemoration of these once-in-a-lifetime sky phenomena? A comet streaking across the sky certainly resembles a fiery serpent. This theory beautifully links a specific historical event to the mound's construction. The location of the mound itself adds another layer of intrigue. It's situated on a high plateau overlooking a river at a unique geological site known as a crypto-explosion structure. Essentially, it is the site of an ancient meteorite impact or a massive gas explosion from deep within the Earth. The area is geologically distinct, with jumbled and faulted rock layers found nowhere else nearby. Did the ancient builders recognize this place as special? Did they feel a unique energy here? Many believe the choice of location was intentional, that they built their sacred serpent on ground that was already touched by a powerful event, either from the cosmos above or the earth below. This adds a powerful spiritual dimension to the mound. It wasn't just a calendar. It was a sacred space, a nexus point connecting the sky, the earth, and human consciousness. Now, we can't discuss ancient mysteries without venturing into the realm of the extraordinary. The sheer precision and cosmic knowledge embedded in the Serpent Mound have led some to propose more unconventional theories. Proponents of ancient astronaut theory, for example, look at the mound and see a message not for humans on the ground, but for someone looking down from above. They argue that such effigy mounds, visible clearly only from a great height, were landmarks or symbols created to communicate with sky gods, or perhaps ancient extraterrestrial visitors. In this view, the serpent isn't just tracking the stars, it's a giant welcome sign or a piece of a galactic puzzle. The serpent swallowing the sun could be interpreted as a depiction of a celestial event far beyond a simple solstice, perhaps representing a starship docking or an eclipse of a distant world. While there's no concrete evidence to support these claims, it's an idea that captures the imagination. It forces us to consider the possibility that ancient peoples knew far more about the universe than we give them credit for. Could they have been in contact with intelligences beyond our world? Or was their own understanding of astronomy so advanced that it appears alien to us today? Regardless of which theory you subscribe to, the Great Serpent Mound stands as a profound monument to human ingenuity and our enduring connection to the cosmos. It reminds us that for thousands of years, our ancestors looked to the stars not just with wonder, but with deep understanding. They saw the heavens as a clock, a calendar, and a source of divine power. They encoded their knowledge not in books, but in the very land they lived on, creating a legacy that continues to baffle and inspire us. The mound is a library of ancient wisdom, a church built of earth, and an observatory open to the sky. It is a symbol of life, death, rebirth, and the cyclical nature of the universe. As we stand in the 21st century, with all our advanced technology, we are still working to decipher the full meaning of this ancient code. The Great Serpent Mound remains a humble yet powerful reminder that some of the greatest mysteries are not hidden in distant galaxies, but lie right here, under our feet, waiting to be understood. What do you think? Was the Great Serpent Mound an astronomical tool, a sacred site commemorating a celestial event, or a message to the sky gods? Let me know your theories in the comments below. I love reading all of your unique perspectives. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you enjoyed exploring this ancient mystery, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more adventures into the unknown. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Until next time, stay curious. Did you know there might be a lost city, an Atlantis, hidden right here in America? Not in some far-off ocean, but beneath the calm, dark waters of Rock Lake, Wisconsin. For over a century, divers and historians have been captivated by tales of strange, submerged stone structures, pyramids they call them, resting on the lake bed. Could this be a natural geological fluke? Or are we looking at the remnants of an ancient, forgotten civilization? Let's dive in and uncover the secrets of the Rock Lake Pyramids. The story begins back in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Fishermen and local residents started reporting bizarre things. They'd see large, dark shapes under the water from their boats. Some even claimed their fishing nets snagged on what felt like man-made structures. The most famous account comes from a man named Claude Wilson in the 1930s. He was an amateur pilot who flew over the lake and was stunned by what he saw from the air. Distinct, pyramid-like forms submerged below. He became obsessed, convinced he had found a lost city. This sparked a wave of excitement and investigation. Divers, including a Dr. Fayette Morgan, began exploring the lake. Their reports were incredible. They described finding at least 10 stone mounds, with the largest being a truncated pyramid, flat on top, about 18 feet high and nearly 100 feet long at its base. They claimed it was built from dark stones, fitted together with some kind of mortar. Another structure, dubbed the ziggurat, seemed to have steps leading up its side. The divers were adamant. These were not natural formations. They looked deliberate, architectural. The question was, who could have built them? This is where the mystery deepens. The leading theory among believers points to the ancient mound-building cultures of North America, like the Hopewell or Mississippian traditions. We know these civilizations built massive earthen mounds and cities, like Cahokia in Illinois, which was once larger than London. Some of these mounds were pyramid-shaped. The idea is that thousands of years ago, perhaps during a dry period when the lake's water level was much lower, a group of these people constructed a settlement or a ceremonial center, right on what is now the lake bed. Then, as the climate changed and the water levels rose, their city was swallowed by the lake, preserved in a watery time capsule. Think about it. Building such massive stone structures underwater would be nearly impossible, even today. So, if they are man-made, they must have been built on dry land. This theory connects the Rock Lake pyramids to a known, real history of incredible engineering by Native American cultures. It paints a picture of a bustling community that was simply lost to the slow, relentless advance of nature. It's a compelling narrative, one that transforms these submerged stones from a geological curiosity into a potential link to a forgotten chapter of American history. Of course, not everyone is convinced. Geologists and archaeologists have pushed back, offering a much simpler, though perhaps less romantic, explanation. They argue that these so-called pyramids are nothing more than glacial erratics. During the last ice age, massive glaciers scraped across this region. As they moved, they picked up and pushed piles of rock and sediment. When the glaciers eventually melted and retreated, they left behind these piles known as drumlins or moraines. According to this theory, the pyramids are simply natural mounds of rock and mud, shaped by the immense power of ice, not by human hands. Skeptics point out that the stones are local, not quarried from far away, and they don't show clear signs of tool marks or being carefully dressed. They also argue that the mortar described by early divers could just be natural mineral deposits or hardened clay. Sonar scans conducted in more recent years have produced ambiguous results. While they do show large mounds on the lake floor, the images aren't clear enough to definitively prove they are man-made constructions. The shapes are often irregular, and what one person sees as a pyramid, another sees as a simple pile of glacial debris. So, we have two competing stories. On one hand, the romantic tale of a lost city, America's own Atlantis, built by sophisticated ancient culture and lost to the waves. On the other, the scientific explanation of glacial geology, a powerful but impersonal force of nature. For decades, the debate has raged on. Early divers, fueled by passion and a sense of discovery, were certain they had found ruins. Modern scientists, armed with sonar and geological knowledge, lean towards a natural explanation. The murky waters of Rock Lake guard their secrets well, making conclusive proof incredibly difficult to obtain. This ambiguity is what makes the legend so enduring. It lives in that fascinating space between myth and reality. The evidence isn't strong enough to confirm a lost city, but it's just intriguing enough that you can't completely dismiss it. The shapes are just a little too perfect, the stories a little too detailed. Every few years, a new team of divers or researchers goes down, hoping to be the ones to finally solve the puzzle. They search for that one definitive piece of evidence, a tool mark, a pottery shard, an inscription that would change everything. Until then, the Rock Lake Pyramids remain one of Wisconsin's greatest mysteries. They are a testament to our fascination with lost civilizations and the unknown depths. Are they the work of ancient architects or the random artistry of a glacier? Maybe the truth is somewhere in between. Perhaps natural mounds were used or modified by ancient peoples for ceremonial purposes. We just don't know for sure. The lake continues to hold its secrets close, inviting us to wonder, to explore, and to imagine what might lie beneath the surface. What do you think? Are you a believer in the lost city? Or do you side with the geologists? Let me know your theories in the comments below. The mystery of Rock Lake is a perfect example of how history and legend can intertwine, leaving us with a story that's as deep and murky as the lake itself. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of America's most fascinating underwater mysteries. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the unknown. See you next time. Have you ever heard of a civilization that built magnificent cities carved into cliffs? thrived for centuries, and then, seemingly overnight, vanished? This isn't the plot of a fantasy novel. It's the real, unsolved mystery of the ancestral Puebloans of the American Southwest. For over 1,000 years, they crafted a complex society, but by the year 1300, their sprawling settlements were eerily silent. What happened? Where did they all go? Today, we're diving deep into one of America's greatest archaeological puzzles, the disappearance of the ancestral Puebloans. Let's travel back in time. Imagine the Four Corners region, where Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah meet. Long before European contact, this rugged, beautiful landscape was home to a vibrant culture. We often call them the Anasazi, a Navajo name, but their modern descendants prefer the term ancestral Puebloans. These weren't simple hunter-gatherers. They were master architects, skilled farmers, and sophisticated astronomers. Their journey began around 1500 BC, evolving from nomadic groups into settled agricultural communities. They perfected the art of dry farming in an arid land, cultivating maize, beans, and squash, the three sisters that sustained them. They were also incredible potters, weaving intricate baskets and creating distinctive black-on-white pottery that tells a story without words. But their most breathtaking achievements were their homes. Initially, they lived in pit houses, dug partially into the ground. But as their society grew, so did their ambition. They began constructing incredible multi-story stone apartment complexes, known as pueblos. Think of them as the first condos in North America. Places like Chaco Canyon in New Mexico became bustling cultural and religious centers. Pueblo Bonito, the largest of the great houses, had over 600 rooms and stood 5 stories high. It was the largest apartment building in North America until the 19th century. This wasn't just housing, it was a marvel of engineering, aligned with solar and lunar cycles. A vast network of roads, some perfectly straight for over 60 miles, connected these major centers. This was a civilization on the rise, organized, prosperous, and deeply connected to their environment and the cosmos. Then, around the year 1150, something began to shift. The people started moving from the open canyons to seemingly impossible locations, high up on sheer cliff faces. This is the era of the famous cliff dwellings, like Mesa Verde in Colorado. Imagine waking up every day with a 1,000-foot drop just outside your door. To get home, you'd have to scale walls using tiny hand and toe holds carved into the rock. Why would an entire society move to such precarious defensive positions? It suggests a growing sense of fear and instability. Something was threatening them. But what? This brings us to the heart of the mystery. By 1300, these incredible cliff palaces and sprawling pueblos were completely abandoned. The plazas fell silent, the kivas were empty, and the storage rooms were left with pots and tools as if the occupants intended to return. But they never did. For decades, the prevailing theory was a simple one. Drought. Tree ring data, a science called dendrochronology, gives us an incredibly detailed climate record, and it shows that a massive, prolonged drought, known as the Great Drought, gripped the region from about 1276 to 1299. For a people who depended entirely on rainfall for their crops, 23 years of little to no rain would have been catastrophic. Failed harvests would lead to widespread famine and force people to leave in search of water. It's a compelling explanation, and it was certainly a major factor. But is it the whole story? Many archaeologists now think drought was just one piece of a much more complicated puzzle. After all, the ancestral Puebloans had survived severe droughts before. Why was this one different? This is where the story gets darker. The move to the defensive cliff dwelling suggests another major pressure: conflict. As resources like water, food, and arable land became scarce due to the changing climate, competition would have intensified. We find archaeological evidence of violence from this period: unburied bodies showing signs of trauma, burned villages, and skeletons that suggest cannibalism, a deeply controversial but persistent finding at some sites. Was it warfare between different Pueblo groups, raids from outside nomadic tribes, or perhaps a violent internal breakdown of society where starving, desperate people turned on each other? The defensive architecture of the cliff dwelling suddenly makes a lot of sense. They weren't just homes, they were fortresses. But there's another layer to this. What if the problems weren't just on the ground, but also within their social and religious systems? The leaders and priests of Puebloan society were expected to mediate with the gods to ensure rain and good harvests. A multi-decade drought could have caused a profound crisis of faith. If the rituals weren't working and the priests couldn't bring the rain, the entire social order that held their world together might have collapsed. People might have lost faith in their leaders and their traditions, deciding to abandon the sacred centers like Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde to seek a new way of life elsewhere. This wasn't just an environmental collapse, but a potential spiritual and political one as well. So, we have a perfect storm, a devastating drought, escalating violence, and a potential breakdown of their religious and social fabric. It's likely not one single answer, but a combination of all these pressures that pushed the ancestral Puebloans to their breaking point. The decision to leave wasn't made overnight. It was a gradual migration, likely happening over several decades, village by village, family by family. They packed what they could carry and began a journey south and east, towards more reliable water sources like the Rio Grande Valley in New Mexico and the mesas of Arizona. And this is the most important part of the story to remember. The ancestral Puebloans didn't just vanish into thin air. They migrated, they adapted, and they survived. Their descendants are the modern Pueblo people of today, including the Hopi, Zuni, and the various Pueblos along the Rio Grande. Their oral traditions are filled with stories of long migrations from a previous homeland. They speak of a time when the world fell out of balance, forcing them to leave their ancestral homes and search for a new center. When a Hopi elder looks at the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde, they don't see the ruins of a lost civilization. They see the footsteps of their ancestors. The mystery of their disappearance is really just a story of migration and resilience. They left behind their magnificent stone cities, but they carried their culture, their traditions, and their identity with them. The pottery styles, the architectural techniques, and the spiritual beliefs of the modern Pueblo peoples are a living link to the great minds who built Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde. So, the next time you see a picture of a silent cliff palace, remember it's not an ending, but a chapter in a much longer story. It's a powerful reminder that civilizations aren't just stone and mortar. They are people. And the people of the cliffs never truly disappeared. They simply walked on, carrying their world to a new horizon. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the past. What do you think was the main reason they left? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this exploration of ancient mysteries, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. We'll see you in the next video. Deep within the rolling hills and ancient mountains of the Appalachians, a secret lies etched in stone, a mystery that predates written history. Tucked away in dark, silent caves are symbols, petroglyphs and pictographs that have baffled archaeologists and linguists for decades. These aren't just random scratches, they are deliberate, complex, and carry a weight that we can feel, even if we can't understand it. What were our ancient ancestors trying to tell us? Was it a language, a celestial map, a dire warning, or something else entirely? Today, we journey into the heart of America's oldest mountain range to uncover the enigma of the Appalachian cave symbols. These markings are found in numerous sites, from Tennessee to Alabama, hidden from the light of day. Unlike the more famous petroglyphs of the American West, which are often carved on open rock faces, these are found deep underground, in places of profound darkness and stillness. This choice of location is the first clue. Why go to such lengths to carve these symbols in the most inaccessible places? It suggests they were meant for a specific purpose, perhaps for rituals, ceremonies, or for knowledge deemed too sacred or powerful for the outside world. Let's look at some of the most famous examples. In Tennessee's unnamed cave, a site so sensitive its location is kept secret, we find a pictograph of a human figure holding a severed head. Nearby, there are images of supernatural beings, part human, part animal. In another cave, we see concentric circles, crosses within circles, and swirling patterns that seem to depict cosmic events or spiritual journeys. One of the most common and perplexing symbols is the weeping eye, a motif found across the Mississippian culture, often associated with the mythological figure known as the Birdman. But what does it mean here, in the eternal dark? Does it represent grief, a portal to another world, or a divine being watching from the shadows? The sheer age of these markings is staggering. Some are estimated to be over 6,000 years old, placing them thousands of years before the Great Pyramids of Egypt. At that time, the people living in these mountains were hunter-gatherers. They hadn't developed what we'd recognize as a formal written language. This leads to the central question: are these symbols a proto-language, a stepping stone to writing? Or are they something fundamentally different? One theory is that these are mnemonic devices, visual aids for storytellers and shamans to recount epic myths, tribal histories, and genealogies. Imagine a shaman leading initiates deep into the earth, the flickering torchlight making the figures on the walls dance and come alive. Each symbol would be a chapter in an oral library, a way to pass down essential knowledge from one generation to the next, ensuring the tribe's culture and wisdom would survive. The cave itself would be a classroom, a sacred text written on the very bones of the earth. Another compelling theory suggests these are cosmological maps. The ancient peoples of the Americas were astute observers of the sky. The sun, moon, and stars governed their calendars, their agriculture, and their spiritual beliefs. Some researchers believe symbols like the concentric circles could represent solar events, perhaps solstices or eclipses, which would have been moments of immense power and significance. The caves might have acted as natural observatories or as sacred spaces to record these celestial observations, linking the underworld of the cave to the cosmos above. The arrangement of certain symbols might even map out constellations or spiritual realms of the upper and lower worlds. But then we encounter the stranger, more abstract symbols, the zigzags, the grids, the complex geometric shapes that don't seem to correspond to any known object or being. This is where things get truly mysterious. Some archaeologists, like Dr. Jan Simek from the University of Tennessee, propose a fascinating idea rooted in shamanism. They believe these symbols are not representations of the physical world, but of the spiritual world. According to this theory, shamans would enter altered states of consciousness, perhaps through rhythmic drumming, chanting, or fasting, to journey into the spirit realm. The geometric patterns they saw, the zigzags, the spirals, are what neuroscientists call entoptic phenomena. These are visual effects generated within the eye itself during altered states. The shamans, upon returning from their spiritual journeys, would enter the caves, places seen as physical portals to the underworld, and record what they had witnessed. The symbols, then, are not a language to be read, but a direct depiction of a non-ordinary reality. They are postcards from another dimension. This would explain why they are found in the deepest, most secluded parts of the caves. The further you go into the earth, the closer you get to the spirit world. This interpretation recasts the meaning of the art entirely. The human-animal figures aren't just myths. They are spirit guides or transformations the shaman experienced. The severed head isn't just a depiction of violence. It could symbolize the acquisition of spiritual knowledge or power. The cave walls become a canvas for experiences that are beyond words, a visual record of a conversation between humanity and the cosmos. However, no single theory fits all the evidence. The sheer variety of symbols across different caves suggests they likely served multiple purposes over thousands of years. Some could be maps, some could be stories, and some could be shamanic visions. It's also possible that we, with our modern mindset, are trying too hard to categorize them. For the ancient peoples, the line between the spiritual and the practical was blurred. A map of the stars could also be a map of the soul. A story about a hero could also be a ritual instruction. The tragedy is that the key to unlocking this code is likely lost forever. The descendants of these ancient cave artists, the Cherokee, Creek, and other tribes, were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands in the 19th century. In this devastating process, countless oral traditions, stories, and the specific knowledge linked to these sacred sites were fractured and lost. While modern tribal elders and historians are working tirelessly to reclaim and interpret their heritage, the direct lineage of knowledge for many of these oldest symbols has been broken. We are left to look at these markings like a book written in a language for which the dictionary has been burned. So, what are we left with? We have these powerful silent messages from a distant past, echoing from the depths of the earth. They challenge our very definition of art, language, and history. They remind us that there are entire libraries of human experience that were never written on paper, entire worlds of thought that existed long before our own. They are a profound testament to the complexity and spiritual depth of the people who created them. Perhaps the point isn't to decode them in the way we decipher a code. Maybe the message is the mystery itself. These symbols force us to be humble. They remind us that we don't have all the answers and that there are realms of human consciousness and history that we may never fully grasp. They invite us not just to think, but to feel, to stand in the imagined silence of that cave, to see the flickering torchlight, and to wonder at the hand that carved a message for a future it could never know. A message that, after thousands of years, we are still trying to read. What do you think these ancient symbols represent? Are they a forgotten language, a map to the stars, or visions from another reality? Let me know your theories in the comments below. It's a conversation that spans millennia, and we are now a part of it. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the deep past. If you enjoyed this exploration of ancient mysteries, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more adventures into the unknown. Hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious. Have you ever gazed into the vast, silent expanse of the Grand Canyon and wondered what secrets it holds? We see the layers of time etched into its magnificent walls, a history of our planet spanning millions of years. But what if there's another history hidden there? A human story, so ancient and so profound, that it could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Americas. Today, we are journeying deep into the heart of one of America's greatest natural wonders to uncover a mystery that has puzzled adventurers and historians for over a century: the legend of the lost city beneath the Grand Canyon. The story begins on April 5, 1909. The front page of the Arizona Gazette blared a headline that seemed almost too incredible to be true: "Explorations in Grand Canyon, Mysteries of Immense Rich Cavern Being Brought to Light." The article detailed the alleged discoveries of a man named G.E. Kincaid, an explorer funded by the Smithsonian Institution. Kincaid claimed to have found, while rafting down the Colorado River, a network of tunnels and caves carved into a sheer cliff face, nearly 2,000 feet above the water. According to his account, this wasn't just any cave system. It was a man-made citadel, a vast underground city. He described descending into a main passageway, finding rooms branching off like the spokes of a wheel, filled with artifacts that defied all explanation. He spoke of copper tools, harder than any steel we have today, granaries filled with ancient seeds, and, most astonishingly, hieroglyphs. But these weren't the familiar symbols of Native American tribes. They were, he claimed, distinctly Egyptian or Oriental in style. Imagine the scene: an American explorer, deep in the Arizona desert, stumbling upon evidence of an ancient Egyptian or Asian civilization. He described finding urns and tablets, weapons, and even mummies, carefully preserved in crypts, wrapped in dark fabric. These figures were said to be giants, far taller than the average person. The main chamber, he reported, contained a large idol, resembling Buddha, seated cross-legged and holding flowers. The sheer scale of the discovery was mind-boggling. Kincaid estimated that the city could have housed up to 50,000 people. The Gazette article was incredibly detailed, even naming a Professor S.A. Jordan from the Smithsonian who was supposedly leading the official investigation. It painted a picture of a major archaeological find, one that would connect the ancient civilizations of the East and West long before Columbus. The story was electric. It captured the public imagination. But then, silence. Almost as quickly as it appeared, the story vanished. When modern researchers tried to follow up, they hit a wall. The Smithsonian Institution has no record of a G.E. Kincaid or a Professor S.A. Jordan. They deny any involvement in such an expedition and have stated that no Egyptian artifacts have ever been found in North or South America. The original Arizona Gazette article from 1909 remains the primary and virtually only piece of evidence. So, was it all just a hoax? A fantastic piece of newspaper fiction designed to sell papers? Many mainstream historians and archaeologists believe so. They argue that the story is a classic example of early 20th century yellow journalism, a sensational tale with no basis in fact. But the story refuses to die. For many, the idea of a cover-up is just as compelling as the discovery itself. Proponents of the theory point to a few tantalizing clues. They note that the area described by Kincaid is now part of a highly restricted, government-controlled section of Grand Canyon National Park. Access is forbidden, fueling speculation that something is being hidden. Furthermore, they point to curious place names in the region, names given by the original surveyors of the canyon in the late 19th century. There's the Isis Temple, the Tower of Ra, the Horus Temple, and the Osiris Temple, all names taken directly from Egyptian mythology. Coincidence? Or were the early explorers aware of something strange in the area? Believers in the lost city also look to the oral traditions of local Native American tribes, like the Hopi. Hopi legends speak of their ancestors emerging from a great underworld, and some stories mention secret cave systems within the Grand Canyon. Could Kincaid have stumbled upon a place that was sacred and known to the Hopi for generations? The Hopi legends describe their ant people, who lived in underground cities during cataclysmic events on the surface. While these are spiritual stories, not archaeological records, the parallels are fascinating. Let's try to piece this together. On one hand, we have a complete lack of physical evidence and an official denial from the very institution said to have sponsored the expedition. On the other, we have a detailed eyewitness account, suspicious place names, and local legends that hint at a deeper truth. Could the Smithsonian have retrieved the artifacts and concealed the discovery to avoid upending our established understanding of history? The idea that an advanced foreign civilization existed in the Americas thousands of years ago is a radical one. It would challenge the entire narrative of human migration and settlement of the continent. This theory is known as hyperdiffusionism, the idea that major cultural developments and technologies all originated from one source, like ancient Egypt, and spread across the globe. Mainstream science largely rejects this, favoring the model of independent invention, where different cultures develop similar ideas on their own. Finding Egyptian hieroglyphs in the Grand Canyon would be a monumental blow to that model. So, what do you think? Was G.E. Kincaid a liar? A simple prospector who spun a fantastic tale that got out of hand? Or was he a brave explorer who made the discovery of a lifetime, only to have it buried by a world not ready for the truth? Could a civilization, perhaps fleeing their homeland, have navigated the vast oceans, traveled up the Colorado River, and built a new home for themselves deep within the canyon walls? It sounds like the plot of a blockbuster movie, but the 1909 article presents it as fact. The mystery of the Grand Canyon. Its lost city is a powerful reminder that there are still so many unknowns about our own planet and its history. It challenges us to question the narratives we've been told and to keep an open mind. While we may never find a definitive answer, the legend itself has become a part of the canyon's mystique. It adds another layer of wonder to an already breathtaking landscape. It whispers of a secret history, waiting in the silent, sun-baked cliffs just beyond our reach. Perhaps one day, a new explorer will find another hidden entrance, or a forgotten artifact will surface, and the silence will finally be broken. Until then, the lost city of the Grand Canyon remains just that. A legend, an enigma, a tantalizing what-if that continues to inspire awe and speculation. The truth, like the city itself, may still be out there, buried deep beneath the desert sands. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the unknown. What do you believe happened? Was it a hoax or a cover-up? Let us know your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed exploring this mystery with us, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure. Until next time, keep questioning and keep exploring.